Okay, just a few words about the regulatory room and how it works. The first thing to say is to position the regulatory room or any of the rooms in the buildingSMART process. We use the rooms as an open forum for anyone to contribute to the discussion about the role of Open BIM in regulatory processes, in requirements processes, and so on. The way that works is that we set up projects, and if those projects are approved by the Standards Steering Committee, then we go on and develop proposals. They can be in the form of reports, they can be in the form of recommendations to improve the buildingSMART standards. So the room is very much the entry point for getting involved with buildingSMART and standards development. And it's also a community of friends and colleagues who are interested. And I think actually that's one of its strengths. As the regulatory problem becomes more and more prominent and of more and more interest across the world. The way the room works is we have a steering committee, and I would very much like to express appreciation for the contribution that the much expanded steering committee is making towards the agendas we're setting. And I think we can be quite proud of the fact that the regulatory room is being held up as an exemplar of how a room should operate. And I think that's a large part due to the hard work of the steering committee and Sheila in particular. We have good global coverage. We have a lot of representatives from Europe, but we also have representation from the Far East and indeed in Canada. And we welcome people getting involved, and particularly if they can represent chapters and areas that we haven't previously covered. And the next. We operate with a room charter, and the charter currently says that we aim to facilitate and influence adoption by stakeholders in this area of regulations, requirements, and recommendations. And yes, our ultimate aim is automated code compliance checking, whether it's for buildings or infrastructure. But there are lots of steps we have to go through on the way. And so we look at related technologies. We invite people to present what's happening around the world. And twice a year, we have an open forum outside of the summit, where we try and reach out to the wider community who may be becoming interested. Yes, and, oh, that's a do, okay. Yeah, skip that. I'll just say that later today in the main sessions, there are 2 presentations from Canadian cities talking about the role of Open BIM and their regulatory processes. So things are happening around the globe. Sometimes we don't know anything about it, and so it's always interesting. In our agenda for Montreal, we have a session on the roadmap this morning, and we will also have sessions on the regulatory information requirements project tomorrow. And also, at the end of tomorrow, we will have a summary for anyone who wants to be updated about what's happened at the summit, and so on. Yes, so I think that having said that, we can move on to the roadmap. Every room is expected to develop a roadmap. Our current roadmap is roughly 5 years old, So back in March, Tomi undertook to lead the group in reevaluating our roadmap. And they've had a number of sessions, and I'd like to hand over to Tomi to update us to where we've got to in that process. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Nick. Camera. Yeah, just to show who I am and where I am. Well, actually, I'm not there, but this is a.
Oh, one other thing. I should say that the room has now filled up completely, and we have 7 guests. So we do have an audience.
Okay, but I hope that there's even more people online. I will share my screen. Yeah. Maybe I can stop the camera. Well, let's see how this works. My idea was to have. Just a sec. Okay. So my idea was to have like really a workshop type of thing. Where did my slides go? Can you see my slides? Nope. Yes, now they are there. Very good. So my idea was to have kind of a workshop type of style so that we could discuss and kind of the ideas that we have had during the sessions that Nick mentioned with the work group. If you are expecting that I'm going to show something like a final version or even like a new version of the roadmap, then you will be disappointed. I have made some notes about what we should do and where we should go, but more or less I'm just kind of hoping that you will give more ideas and comments, and we can build the roadmap together. Just to start with, or maybe I will walk through this the current version. This is already bit edited, but this is based on the version that we have. Probably I know that there's new logos, for example, coming. Maybe we have new buildingSMART templates for PowerPoint, so maybe those need to be implemented as well for the new version. Here you can see the document history. So we had maybe this should be called more like 2.5 at the moment. So we have the first version was published 2018. Then we did a small revision 2019. And now it's time to create the third version of the roadmap. If we look at the tasks that we set in the version 2 of the roadmap, I think that we have pretty much followed the things that we have been kind of identified here. The roadmap that we created, the first and the second version of the roadmap, they were not kind of a chronological or schedule type of roadmap. They were more like identifying different levels of maturity. So we have some low-hanging fruits. We have maybe a bit more difficult, advanced BIM type of questions that we need to study, and then we had these long-term ambitions, and we still I think that we still have them, but maybe we need to evaluate that. Are they still valid? Maybe they are they in the correct order? And then what we have discussed in our earlier sessions is that we need to be maybe more concrete, or we have to kind of make also or we have to have some kind of idea that in which, like, when are these going to happen. So maybe those are the kind of the biggest things. Already in the discussions that we have had earlier, there hasn't been anything new, totally new things. Of course, there is maybe some new things like IDS coming in, but those are kind of I see that those are kind of technical details. But if we are in the bigger scale, if you are talking about this, I don't see any kind of revolution, and even the evolution is quite small in this case. But maybe I'm wrong, and I hope that you will comment both online and the people sitting in the room. So the roadmap, as I said, it was created in Paris, and we have identified a couple of or quite many things that the regulatory room needs to do or should do, and we have already started to do them. So we have, like Nick mentioned, we have the regulatory information requirements project. We have done some marketing related surveys and tried to engage people more. And we have the steering group is now a bigger group than it was 5 years ago or 4 years ago. So we are kind of growing, and we are developing, but maybe we should be now, as we are a bigger group, we have maybe more resources, maybe we should do more. So that is something which I have said many times, and I will say it many times again in the future, is that a regulatory process or building permit process is a key process. It is the key process. It's the only process that every project worldwide, globally, needs to go through. And so it's a common thing for all professional building projects. It's something, and if we make this process, this key process, a based on that it's so based on open BIM and IFC, then I think that everything else will follow automatically. And so I can't stress more that I see that the importance of the regulatory processes and also regulatory room is much bigger than we are today. But that's how I try to kind of emphasize that that we are doing a really kind of important part of the buildingSMART journey, or we are really big or important part of the buildingSMART journey. Just an example, maybe this is and this is again a thing that I have told many times. I started here in Finland. I started to talk about BIM-based building permits like 10 years ago, and I was by the time I was chair of buildingSMART Finland, and we started to kind of we started to introduce the IFC to ministries and building authorities, and some building authorities they kind of pick it up, and they started to study, and we have already there are some building permits already kind of maybe you should call them pilots, but they are already kind of some authorities have carried through building permits totally using just IFC, no prints, no PDFs at all, of course, this is all kind of piloting and testing and experiencing, but still there has been kind of interest towards this. And now during the last 3 years, the ministry has really picked up this, and they have had this Heureka moment, and they want to kind of have what we have here in the roadmap, these automated information flows, and this is kind of one of the key elements in these automated information flows is IFC and use of IFC in building permits. And now, as we speak, there's the new legislation in the parliament at the moment, and it should be kind of the decision should be out maybe this week or next week, that whether or not it's approved, and it's quite likely that it's going to be approved, which means that IFC is going to be made mandatory for building permits. It's not just that it's something that you can do, but it's going to be mandatory. So all professional building projects should use IFC, at least for the building permit. And this is what I'm talking about, the key process, that once we get this key process IFC based, I think that everything else will follow. Okay, but this was just an example. Yeah, about the current roadmap, let's go back to there. Some definitions, maybe we need to add IDS. I'm not sure if the MVD is that kind of obsolete. Maybe you can comment that. We have for example, in the regulatory information requirements project, one of the goals was to create MVDs. Maybe IDS has now replaced that. I'm not totally sure about this, but it could be one thing that we probably should replace here, or at least add the IDS. ISO 9650 series is coming more and more popular. It doesn't it's not kind of it doesn't contain the regulatory processes. It's not kind of it's more like for the construction and maintenance, but that's something, maybe a question that should be in some way or the other aligned with 19650. This is also something which is quite old. This is from the study that regulatory room created with the lead of Masaki Muto some years ago. Maybe I don't know. Maybe do we need to simplify? This is something that I have been thinking, that now we have the different stages, like we have the concept approval, technical approval, construction approval. Maybe we can call them just one process. I don't know. Then we have this vision. I'm still really okay with this. I don't have any. I think this is still valid. This is a bit more detailed, and I think that even this is still valid. That we still have lots of authorities worldwide which are still in the manual stage. They haven't even started the electronic phase yet. And at the same time, we have quite many authorities who are already kind of testing, at least in the hybrid, or they are testing in the BIM initiation phase. And then there are maybe very, very few who are ambitious enough to at least try to reach the automated in some level. Then we have the actual roadmap, which is not kind of a traditional roadmap in a way that it's showing things that will be done in chronological order. And just yeah, here we had a regulatory MVD, so I have already replaced a regulatory IDS. Maybe I should put a question mark there, so you see what was there. But then comes maybe all this is kind of more static, maybe minor changes here and there. But then I think that this is the kind of the big thing. And this is something, this is kind of a notes that I did from our meetings, that there are a couple of new things. The qualification framework of people. This is a new thing that came up in our workshop a couple of weeks, over last week maybe. And then of course CO2 and all environmental impacts. Those are not only industry things, it's basically authorities who control those. So even though you can say that it's an industry thing, but I see that it's more or less driven by regulations, and therefore it's part of our roadmap in my mind. The red ones, with the red outline, they are things that we are already kind of doing. So these are from the regulatory information requirements project. Maybe this one guideline, how to specify regulatory norms to implement open standard specification and machine readable regulations. This is maybe a new thing, but we have in the regulatory information requirements project, we have a work item which is called guidelines. So maybe this belongs into that box. Just to explain what it means, that there was an idea which I think is a good idea, that we should kind of the authorities maybe struggle a little bit, or maybe quite a lot, about how they should specify local norms in a way that open standards can be implemented, and how they should specify the rules or guidelines in order to achieve the machine readability. And so they came up a kind of that, can we make a framework or guideline how to do this? Then we have the green ones here on top. These are also ongoing things that we do. We have maybe tomorrow, is it our the workgroup 2 led by Franco, and he's going to walk you through about how can we engage, or maybe not how, but anyway, it's focused on engagement, and how do we get more authorities involved, and how do we educate maybe the authorities. But then we have many issues that are still kind of Of course, we have these evaluate, and this is part of the work that we are doing at the moment. And also the sustain. How do we keep up with the world which is surrounding us, and how do we keep up with other rooms in buildingSMART, the specifications and guidelines coming from ISO and things like that. And this is something which we are doing also, or at least trying to do with the resources that we have. So we have had some joint sessions with other rooms. We are liaisoning with buildingSMART, other buildingSMART projects which we see that are relevant to our work, and so on. So this is where we are at the moment. I guess that maybe I should stop my monologue and ask you to comment either through chat or from the room. I intentionally didn't go to the full screen so I can make I can try to make it as big as possible. So I can make markings here. So if I go full screen, then I can't do any editing here. Okay, but any thoughts? Maybe from the, shall we start from the room? And the comments you can also put there.
And I think what we're trying to do with the working group 2, which was mentioned, which is the development of a guideline for regulators on open BIM, is that in general regulators don't come to meetings. I mean, there are 2 upstairs later, but in general they don't. And so we need to produce a document which contains case studies as well, because we want to reach people and tell them what their steps might be, and that's really important. There will of course be countries who are already well ahead. We heard Finland is pressing ahead with the idea. We've heard in previous sessions that Abu Dhabi is developing a system online which is apparently working, and we've heard that Estonia is very active. So we will produce a report which will highlight the people who are in the front and give guidance to those who are further behind. Let's go there. At the back.
Good morning, Frank Hoboken. buildingSMART process. Two things. One is, of course, the digital process for building valuation. It's something that, of course, we talk about in France and there is a demand in other countries. But as you said, it's very different stage in different countries because, to give you an example, what France is calling digitalization of building permit is to have the possibility to share PDF files. And they call it digitalization.
Yeah, well, happens a lot. Yeah, it's a first step.
Yes, that's why I said
yeah.
There's different steps.
Yeah.
And the second thing, because I think I'm also maybe at the origin of this IFC-based greenhouse gas emission calculation. I would really like to go further with that because there is clearly a demand from the different stakeholders to have a greenhouse gas calculation which is robust, solid, transparent, and standardized, at least around Europe. Because if you look at the definition of what is a low carbon building in Europe, it's a nearly zero energy building with a low carbon emission according to the set of standards. And the European norms are differently interpreted in different states. So you don't have a standards on perimeter calculation. You don't have a standards on how to share data. Because if you look, you certainly know in Europe here the Eco platform, which is a platform where people, the products are delivering the European product declaration. It's under a format which is standardized for them, but nobody can talk with. So there is a lot of challenges to go through, and I do think that this project also needs to be conducted in cooperation with the product room and the building energy management room, because you have greenhouse gas, embedded greenhouse gas from products and from the energy use of the building. So it's all to work with them in order to try to create a proposal for standardization of perimeter of calculation, as I said, and sharing data with from the product to the designer, to the construction, to the asset managers, to the investor, and the most important, as I said yesterday, to the banks and insurance. And the problem is that as of today, everybody's recalculating the greenhouse gas emission with different approach and a different point of view. And we don't have a line of information that can be reliable.
No.
So it's at least in Europe, it's a challenge, and there buildingSMART can be a core body to work and to help with different stakeholders to have a common data environment.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right.
I
mean, building.
Just that I would like you to collaborate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you agree on such a point.
Yeah. Well, I think Tomi's point is that that's next, that we need to do this. I think we heard yesterday that it is very, very messy between greenhouse gases and then the ESG, environment, social and governance questions, where it is horribly messed up and complicated. But what we can do is, what we're good at is saying, well, what is the information that you want to deal with this? And as with the Regulatory Information Requirements project, I think we can identify what the information requirement is, whilst it'll probably be other people who will be debating what the correct algorithms to use are, and so on. And so
I totally agree with Nick about this, that defining the calculation rules and the algorithms, I think it's not part of our work, but kind of finding the attributes, the properties that are used, and which are kind of a basis for the calculation. That's something that we can do in here. The thing is, and this is of course a very kind of hot topic here in Finland, because the new legislation brings in also the carbon footprint calculations, and the ministry is at the moment preparing the annexes to the legislation regarding how to calculate and what kind of listings or quantity takeoff listings you should take off from take off from the IFC model. Now the debate and kind of the findings so far is that if you look at, I'll go a little bit back. So as I said, there are kind of I see that the concept technical approval and even the construction approval, you don't know the products. So actually the when you are calculating the CO2 at the building permit stage, it's based on estimations. It's not based on real products. Maybe your model doesn't contain all the product or all the information about, for example, finishes. We typically have, of course, the building core, and of course I think that we know basically the biggest loads of CO2, so to speak. But there's a lot of things that are still uncertain, especially the products. And then Now, kind of a new thing here in Finland is that you have to deliver the IFC. We have only one stage, so we don't have concept approval, technical approval, and construction approval. They are basically one approval phase. But in that, let's call it a technical approval phase, you need to provide the IFC model, but it doesn't still contain the product data. And then the new thing is that you need to also provide the handover model. And so far, the authority has not been interested in the handover material. They are checking that you have followed kind of the rules, and the building is about the same that it was in the actual in the technical approval phase. And they are checking today that you have kind of used CO marked materials and so on, but they are not collecting the information. And this is something which is a really, really new thing, that in the new legislation, it means the authority is also collecting this. Well, okay, what happens then that in the handover phase, we have, of course, we have knowledge about all the materials and products that have been used in the building. And then we can calculate the CO2 like in detail. But what then? If the CO2 calculated in the handover phase is not the same, or is it's not in the same kind of a level that was estimated at the technical approval phase, then what will happen? Will they just remove the building, or is it demolished? I think no. So nobody knows that what is kind of what is the benefit, and what is the kind of what kind of how do you say? Is there taxes or something? I don't know what happens, but this is a big issue, and I think that this is something that which has, because this legislation comes from the European Union here in Finland. I think that people have not really thought about this.
Okay.
Because we can answer that, and we have a calculation process.
Yeah.
So you enter into
Yes.
a process where you have information about your greenhouse gas.
Tomi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, Tomi, can you hear questions from the room, or can you only hear me?
Well, I hear you better than the others in the room. So, but I can kind of.
That's good. Well, we're underway. We're just having we've taken the discussion on a bit, and Frank has said that in France, from the 1st of January this year, that they have the rules in place.
Yes, Tomi, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So all the question you asked, we spent 3 years to answer it in France. Mm-hmm. And if you wish, I can have a call with you to explain how we went through the process.
Absolutely. That would be nice. That would be really good.
And no, it's mandatory, and all the building permit has to give the first vision about their greenhouse gas at the building permit, and then they have to contractualize the real greenhouse gas impact at the delivery of a building. So this is how it works. The worst problem, the biggest problem we had is to get the information from products. So we now have to live with three types of information. One which is a detailed information about product. One which is let's say a generic product, and the other one which is let's say a global approach about what could be the impact. So this is where we are. But I will not take so long with that, and we can talk together.
Good. I mean, I think it's clear that there's a.
It was 3 years of work. So
yeah. Well, this is exciting.
in 2 minutes.
and I think we can say that there's we should consider starting a project to make sure that whether the regulatory information requirements project can cover this or whether we need a separate one. I think we'll need a separate project.
Yeah, I think that we need a separate one, and should be in collaboration, maybe with building room, maybe with product room, because this is something that kind of involves many parties, I guess.
Okay, and Masako Mutu has commented that in Japan they are still focused on energy calculations and the carbon dioxide emissions in use, or predicting the in use. So we must remember that although Europe is getting serious about embodied carbon, in the rest of the world they're still really focused on energy consumption in use and so on. Just to carry on around the room.
Morning, my name is Edward Distill from buildingSMART Germany. I'm Deputy Chairman of buildingSMART Germany.
Edward Distill from Germany. Yes, and any comments on the work we're doing?
Yeah, I just figured out I'm in a project group in Germany which cares for the digitalization of German building regulations. And I just was figuring out where can I find that kind of topic within the schedule you're about to.
Well, yes.
Do you think it is?
Well, there's an item here on how to specify regulatory norms. This is the area that I've been working in for some years, and I think the major obstacle has been the difficulty in getting the right rules the rules being checked correctly. And I think there are some answers that are now ready. And we have to be careful about saying that everything would be perfect if only the regulations could be rewritten. Yes, it would be nice if legislators took our opinions into consideration, but I think we have to recognize that much of the legislation and regulations won't change, and how do we cope with that? At the same time, as I think we can all look at the regulations and wish they were written better. But of course, regulators wish that BIM was more like the regulations, and designers wish the regulations were more like design. But it is a very important topic. We did a report, let me say 5 years ago, about the different technologies for sharing rules. And I think it may be time to revisit that, because more and more people are realizing that writing computer code is expensive and risky. And so we should minimize it. And because and the other thing, of course, is that with a legal aspect to what we're doing, we have to maximize the transparency. What went wrong? Well, one of the things that went wrong with Singapore was that there were too many steps between what was in the written documents and the failure message that were being generated at the end, and we need to take out as many steps as we can.
See, I'm a lawyer, and I'm working for the government of North Rhine-Westphalia, which is a federal state of Germany, and so I'm coming from the legal side in this industry. I have a short presentation, which I think it's on the agenda for tomorrow in the morning session, which was prepared for that group by Professor Markus König from Bochum, and this shows the way that the German project group wants to advance in this project. Okay. So we can if you discuss that afterwards.
Yeah, if we can share machines up here, but it'd probably be better if you can put it on a stick so that we can put it on the main machines and give it to Sheila, and then because we don't want to be disrupted by the technology, do we? Okay, just carrying on around the room. Rick.
Yeah, Rick Klooster from the Netherlands, buildingSMART, the Netherlands, also part of the regulatory room. steering committee since a few months, so I'm still getting used to the whole thing. And also working together with the Estonia case. So really interesting and ideas about what to do. So let's discuss stuff together.
Yeah. Okay. And
Hi, I'm Jan Saar. I'm from the Estonian Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communications. And we are in the process of implementing the BIM-based building permit solution throughout Estonia nationally. And we hope to pilot it at the end of this year or early next year. It's going to be launched nationwide after that. And it's not going to be a mandatory process at first. It's going to be an option to use, and that's what we really want to nudge both the applicants and the reviewers towards this process and make it clear as rain that it's faster, it's easier for everybody, and well, you might not even have to put it into the law because from the industry side they see a huge benefit for it. They want to do it. It's really the municipalities we have to convince, but that's why we try to do it as easily as possible in terms of the system. It's the user interface, as little buttons as possible, and as much automation as possible. So we have some automated checks. But I think, the key is just to get it going, get it out there, and start using it. And I know you mentioned that software development is expensive. We should try to minimize what we do. But on the other hand, we should do as quickly as possible little pieces of software, get them into the hands of the users, try it out. If it doesn't work, go back to fix it something, and then try it again. If not, that's a very agile approach. And that's what we're trying to do in Estonia. And we're going to launch the system. It's I'm quite sure it's going to be problems with it. And but then we get into the discussions of what we really need to fix and what is maybe more important to the municipalities, the regulators, and how we really start communicating through BIM with them. Because
okay, so Jan Saar has just summarized the Estonian approach of being very gentle and not having any compulsion, and trying out small bits of code or solutions and gradually evolving, rather than having to have or going for a complete solution immediately. So that's
don't get me wrong. The solution is complete. You can do a BIM-based permit from start to finish. It's just what are the checks there? What kind of checks we need to add? Is it going to cover everything that they want? But essentially, the system we have can easily replace the existing process where you have drawings. So that's not an issue. It's just whether or not the whole process works as we intended it to work.
So it's a process based on gradual introduction and a bit of feedback, and trying to evolve into a situation where it's the preferred method.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're trying to get the first movers, the first early adopters, and create them kind of the champions for other municipalities to see that how well it's working, and they want to be part of it.
So we'll, I think my question would be, what can the regulatory room do to help that? I hope everyone in this room will contribute to our guidance for regulators, because as well as straightforward guidance and of the best thinking that we can find, we want to include case studies and examples, because for most people, especially in the regulatory environment, they start from a very low base of understanding what technology can do. And so obviously as many case studies and examples helps to make it believable. And that's often the challenge. We had a forum in the UK 4 years ago, BIM for regulation. and on the left-hand side of the room sat all the regulators, and on the right-hand side sat all the technologists and BIM experts and so on. And it was just a complete gulf in the conversation because the regulators didn't believe that there was anything that the technology could offer. We did some seeing is believing, and then the regulators didn't turn up anymore. But I mean, out of it came a small group which looked at health and safety as a special issue, and that was quite positive, because that particular regulator was very keen to get designers to think about health and safety. It's not just a problem for contractors. Designers should think, and it was part of their agenda, and so we fitted in quite well there. So I think the the different models and examples and so on, I hope if we can get them into the report, then it will help spread the message. And I think the big pull is going to be, if you want your approval quickly, then prepare the information in a form that can be checked systematically. The International Finance Corporation has produced league tables on how long it takes to get permission to build a warehouse around the world. And the variations are quite stunning, but in some countries it can be 200 days. That should make it an easy win, because we should be able to do it in a few days or whatever. Anna, you've waited patiently.
Okay. I'm Anna Moreno, Italian chapter, and I just want to let you know that we are, as chapter, we are going to study a use case for our railroad company, because they are going to build a new line, and usually they need to have permission from all the municipalities they go through, and also from the firemen, state.
Ministry for the Environment, or
it's the fireman offices. We need to have a permission also from the escape from tunnels or things like that. And so the idea is that we start to analyze the information that those people need, and then without that we can build a real automatic permit. But from the point of view of the rail company, if there is already a way that they push a button and they have the files to go to the municipality, is already a very big step forward. So I think that this could be useful also for this community to know. And I also listened to Frank. In Italy, we have that the Ministry of Environment requires a certificate that is called CAM, which is environmental criteria, minimum criteria, environmental criteria evaluation. But usually it's a static document that you provide when you have finished your building. Say, okay, this is this environmental impact. So it would be interesting to have the process that Frank has made, because we can go to our ministry and say, look, it's too late to have a certificate in the end of the process. So you should have something in the beginning so that you can say if it meets or not the environmental requirements.
Tomi, we're hearing from Anna from Italy that we should also think about infrastructure regulation, and particularly the case of railways, and also the interaction with the other regulators, the ones that ask for environmental reports and social impact reports and so on, which are very much part of the process, and but tend to be less information based than the raw technicalities. And of course, I mean, my comment would be that you get inflation, because if the only way of passing a regulation is to provide a report, then people will pay for fatter and fatter and longer reports. And rather than making sure that the specific information that's relevant is delivered. And that's a common problem in the UK with fire regulation. Fire strategy reports are getting fatter and fatter and fatter, but I don't think buildings are getting safer and safer and safer. So that's an area where we shouldn't neglect infrastructure, and we shouldn't neglect the other interested parties and how they interact with the process. I know in Europe, there's been some very interesting work on documenting regulatory processes by Judith Fouth, who is continuing to work across Europe, looking at different processes and producing a common process map. Well, a number of process maps about how these things are working, and we can use that to think about how we fit into those. So that's good. Just there was one technical question that Tomi posed, which is about MVDs and IDS, and I apologize for going into technicalities. We have the IFC as a schema, and we have the buildingSMART data dictionary as a way of documenting in multiple languages the properties that are recommended for use, and so on. The MVD has always been, well, it's been for a long time, the tool that we use to specify subsets of the IFC. So it's been said many times, and including in our information requirements project, that we need to use an MVD to define what information should be in a regulatory submission. The other use of MVDs has been to specify how we're going to test software, particularly authoring software. In the last year, the decision has been made to keep MVDs for specifying software certification and so on, because it's a very technically exact tool. But to develop a simpler tool called IDS for capturing the information requirements in everyday exchanges and so on. So I think the outcome of our regulatory information requirements may be an IDS document rather than an MVD document. If we discovered some particularly difficult relationships or entities that needed to be in the model, we might go back to buildingSMART technical and say we need new entities, and that would lead to a new MVD. But in general, the IDS is going to be the method by which people demand information and check that it's been delivered. So the evolution or a splitting of the role of MVD so that the very technical aspect of checking software stays with MVD, and IDS is the one that we'll be talking about more generally. And IDS is, I think version 1 is going to be announced very soon. You heard yesterday that some organizations have already implemented aspects of it. This version 1 is very much aimed at covering 90% of what people want to specify and require. I'm very conscious of the things that IDS can't do and MVD can, but that's because I'm been around for a long time.
Maybe because I started to, or I'm referring to what Rick and Jan said before, that now if we are looking at the IDS today, of course I'm not an IDS expert, but what I have kind of studied it and how I have understood it, it can check through IDS. I can specify, and to me it's always when you can specify, then you can also check. You can specify that certain entity like IFC wall should have certain properties attached to it, and you can kind of check that kind of things. But then when we are speaking about the regulatory kind of the requirements for regulatory use, I think that we need a bit more complex things, and maybe that would be kind of the contribution that the regulatory room could do for the future development of IDS by kind of specifying and defining that what kind of rules we actually need, so that it's no longer just to check that do we have a property with certain values in the model, but rather kind of checking that can we kind of, for example, for fire escape routes or zoning, fire zoning, or whatever, kind of, we have quite many kind of regulatory checks that need to be, and maybe there needs to be a language to specify those checks to IFC. So maybe that could be something that, and when I'm looking at the roadmap, we have here that was from the previous version. We have an item which is called Develop Machine Readable Regulation Language. Maybe this could be the item. Maybe the title is not absolutely correct, but it could be something that we are not actually creating a regulation language, but more like a regulation check language, which is kind of IDS version 2.
Yeah, I think the question of an IDS version 2 is very pertinent. When I tried to expand the expressiveness or the capability of IDS, I was told that there was no demand for it. And when I said, well, I'm demanding it, I was told that I didn't count. And that there were real customers out there with real problems. I think there is a spectrum of information demands that goes from what properties should be on what objects, and then and what objects should be present, because in the case of building, we always want spaces to be represented. And if people forget to do that, then we really are stuck with most building regulations. But then you can get on to, with perhaps a fire rating, that it should be provided, that it should be in the following format, whether it's a number of minutes or whether it's a code. And then you can say, well, we can list the value, the allowed codes. And then the next step is to say, well, in this situation, if it's a compartment wall, then it should be this code. And so we've gone from information requirements, small step by small step, and we can end up by saying we want to use the IDS for actually capturing regulations. Now, beyond that, there are, of course, regulations of much greater complexity, and it may be that the IDS is never going to be the language to do it. But I think we should look again at how we capture the meaning of regulations, which is my topic. I can say that because I'm writing a PhD, and that's the title. But also how the forms that those rules can be shared. because if we can reduce the amount of computer code that has to be written, we increase the size of the market and the opportunities. So maybe we should include on the roadmap, change the guideline how to specify regulatory norms, and put alongside it something about how do we share, how do we introduce interoperability into requirements and regulations, so that the business case for, we've got software developers in the room, and if we could increase the size of the market by saying, by producing a more general approach, then that would be useful too. Okay.
Just a note that in the Estonian system, there's already quite complex rules kind of built in, and I think that at least in some, maybe Jan or Rick can comment, but to my understanding, they are already put together in kind of a machine readable format. Maybe it's not, of course, standardized, and it's kind of now just for this one system, but I think that there's potential to develop that kind of rules into a international language, rule language. Well, at least in a simple format, and that could kind of help other authorities to express their needs, and then of course software companies to develop these kind of tools to study the models, and yeah. Maybe Rick or Jan can comment.
Do you want to come up? Just come up.
Tomi, I totally agree with the machine standard regulation language, and I think that's one of the most important results for the Accord project, for us at least, because now everyone is doing something else, and if we can standardize it, that would be great, because then you can also exchange the rules, and it will become much easier for everyone to share rules or whatever. But yeah, you're in the what is it called, advisory board, so you'll be involved. UK is involved in the Accord project.
Yes.
So
just to explain, Europe is currently is funding 3 projects: Accord, DigiChecks, and Check. And at first glance, they're all doing the same thing, which is looking at improving the regulatory processes. And buildingSMART International is a partner in 2 of them. And so I'm talking to the management office about what their role will be, and where the regulatory room and can contribute, and so on. So that's a challenge to work out how we're going to be involved. But I think all 3 projects, and I'd also mention the DCOM project in the UK, Digital Compliance Project, which is completed, all have got quite a lot to say, or all are looking at trying to introduce the interoperability and sharing and the separation of the rules from the code that executes them. I think it's a prerequisite. And again, there are steps in that. You can say we can write a code that implements the Estonian escape rules, or we can say we can write code that implements escape rules, and we parameterize it with the Estonian distances and whatever it is. And then you can look at something like Celebri, which tries to make a catalog of all the possible kinds of rules and the parameters you might put into them, but is a bit confused about, well, no, sorry, it's up to the user to decide what objects they apply them to. And then, what we want is a set of rules that not only define the requirements, but also to what objects they apply. And that's really important. And what I see as being important is also capturing the exceptions. because regulations are written by committees, and so they often grow and people add exceptions, especially in America because it's done by open committee. And so the regulations aren't always as neat as we would like. And so we've got to think about, can we capture those complexities? Yeah, so I think that we should go back to the subject of rule interoperability because it's 4 or 5 years since we last did. And do a survey to find out which are actually being used. I mean, I know academically that there are dozens of trials and papers, people choosing their language and choosing their target problem and saying we've got a result. But very few are actually looking at saying, is there a general solution? And it's tough because there's no limit to the complexity that a regulation can adopt. In China, they have lots of individual clauses, and you can pick up any clause you like, and that's it. You just 3 or 4 lines, and you either implement that clause or you don't, and you go on to the next one. It's very methodical, as you might expect. As I say, in the USA in particular, but in the UK, the code it's messier, more nuanced, more trying to be more subtle, and we need to think about that. So I think we can put down that there is a need to look at machine readability and interoperability of rules again, and so that's good. How are we doing for time? 5 minutes. Jan, do you want to, you can come forward, or I'll repeat your question.
Tomi, the roadmap looks great. My only question is how it's very ambitious. How are you going to be able to complete all of this?
Very good question. And what I would like to, because of that, the 2 things. First of all, we are building smart here. Accord is Accord, but we are building smart. We should focus into things that are in the scope of building smart. And so if it's about IFC, that's building smart. But if it's about general kind of regulation language in a way, I think that that's, if it's not within the IFC scope, then I think that it's out of the scope of regulatory room. That's my intuition. And the second thing is that we need to be realistic here, and we probably need to take some of the things that we have planned, or then maybe we just extend the timeline and see that, okay, these things will be done in the future. But maybe those are the things that you could, when I think that there's a break, you will have a coffee or something, and maybe you can discuss this during that. One thing that before the break, one thing that came up also, and of course Jan pointed out that we need to be kind of, need to understand can we do it, but there was an idea for kind of developing a qualification framework, or I don't know if that's a good word, but kind of qualification criteria of people, meaning the people who are the building authorities. That's something that is that the regulatory room who's doing that, or is that somebody else? Is it well, when it's about IFC, then probably it's about building smart as well. So, but
it's a good question. I mean, we have in the last couple of years, our resources and interest in what we're doing has grown enormously. So we do have more resources than we had with the previous iteration of the roadmap. Yes, we should prioritize things. and we obviously will cut. We will adjust the timescales if we have to. As far as qualifications are concerned, I think there is a certification, not a room, a group that is defining qualifications, and one of the things that they said that they would do is to we now have a basic qualification which I passed last month, and they were then talking about producing specific qualifications for different professions. And we could certainly start the conversation about whether we want to start profiling what an information competent regulator would look like, or something like that. I don't think it'll be top of the list. I think they'll probably go for architects or designers and contractors first. So there is a framework out there, and if we had the ideas, we could feed them through. I think so yeah, our role would be to maybe coming out of the guidance document at the end of it, we will have some idea on what we think the educational points that people need to pick up. But I think if we went too quickly with that, we would end up disqualifying all of our audience, because many don't have the skills that are relevant. We need to educate them first before we start testing them. Yeah. Okay, so I think we've got some good points. I think if we take a half-hour break, and when we come back, we certainly want to make sure that anyone who's online has a chance to chip in with some further questions, or if anything hasn't been clear because of the hybrid nature, do put a question in the chat, and we can go back and revisit anything that wasn't clear whilst we were talking. Yeah, and then we will try and work out the final, anything else we need to add to this. So thanks, Tomi, and we'll see you in half an hour, I hope.
Okay, cheers. Yes.
Good.
Okay.
And,
Good. Okay.
see you then.
See you then. Bye-bye.